Here we go. All right. We're in.
I love your
Well,
shirt.
I know. Well, now you can't see it, but yeah, I did. It's on purpose.
Wow. I mean, I have to wear one every day, but you didn't have to.
It's official. Yeah, it's official business over there. How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good. Star and I are working from home right now. I pick up Jude later today, and then Owen and Ella come back to us tomorrow. So
Nice.
we've had like a week basically without kids, which is insane.
And was it their spring break?
No, it's because they're scheduled with their other parents basically. Like they go to them for a week and then
Right.
come to us for a week.
Yeah.
So, but they did go through their spring break and didn't do anything.
Right. We're on spring break this week. Yay.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. We tend to not travel during the school year anyways, or even in the summers. So, but it was our spring break. Yeah. Still is actually.
yeah. So one of the things I was going to say is like y'all live pretty far outside of the city, and what are things like out there in Maple Valley? I know it's a little different than being in the epicenter of what was happening in Seattle. What are things like? What are things like out there right now?
Well, of course, I haven't been in the city, so I can't compare that. But obviously, it's the same in regards to the grocery stores, and everyone's masking up and even gloving up, as of
Right.
this week. So our normal is not normal, just as the same in the city. Um,
Sure.
I mean, we are slightly isolated living on property, but that's our normal. Nothing changed for us in that regard because of what's going on in the nation. Nothing is normal, right, for any of us, which
Right.
is the big thing that we're all trying to adapt to. And I do think that that's the biggest thing right now is everyone realizing that all these interruptions are our real life right now.
Sure.
And so we can't try to keep living the same life that we were living before
Right.
because that's just like a thing of the past and it will return again. But we will have a different perspective on that, hopefully, right? I mean, that
Sure.
would be the fruit of this all. So obviously with us homeschooling, we could have gone about this and not changed much at all. But even for us having homeschooled, our schedule and lives look completely different. At first I was like, well, we're just going to keep going through our, curriculum and we know what we have to do. But that just felt really kind of ignorant to it felt like there was an elephant in the room, basically.
Sure. Sure.
So we've even changed how we're doing schooling, even though we homeschooled before. I think mainly it's so that I changed things I kind of freed up some things for my sanity and maybe for my husband's sanity too, that since we know that we're all together all the time right now, like I can't leave to go to the gym. I can't, it's the same for all of us.
Right.
I loosen the reins on, I let my kids sleep in right now and that's okay. Before they had to get up at a certain time, but what's the point in that right now? Like, so I have quiet time in the morning and that's our kind of separation time. You have to make what works in your family, make those
Sure.
decisions. How has it been for you guys? Are you having to implement the schooling at home or?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll back up real quick. So everyone got in. Eric and I have known each other for it's almost like it's going to be like 15 years pretty soon, which is insane.
Yeah.
It's actually maybe 15 or 16. How
Yes.
old's Ella?
She's going to be 16 this
Yeah. So
summer.
I've known you since before she was born, but
Yes.
so Erica has been homeschooling for a long time. Her husband is Don Clark of Invisible Creature. Erica actually has an Invisible Creature email list, so I'm sure he rubs her in every once in a while and you know, they work on some things together. But Erika is a killer. When I met Erika, she was working at this really killer, like modern furniture store called Diva, and was doing a lot of like, you know, design work, interior stuff, and sales through that. And so we've just known each other for a really long time. And anytime I go out to Seattle, their house is open, and they, you know, we hang out a lot. And so anyway, you know, I'm homeschooling 3 kids when they're with us. She's homeschooling 3 kids every day. They're on spring break right now. And, you know, back to your question, Erika, I mean, things are pretty good. I think what happens is, you know, the kids get here and they're not used to, you know, obviously being at home all day.
Right.
Their teachers are not used to giving a curriculum that would help them kind of last the whole day, or basically, you know, stick with, you know, their studies the entire day. So what happens is they wake up when they want to. Jude wakes up pretty early. Owen and Ella wake up around 9, and we make sure they get a breakfast, and then they start reading, and we try to stick to a schedule as much as possible. Jude likes to stick on to a schedule, period. It's just kind of the way he is. And so we have something written on the refrigerator right there to where he just kind of looks, so he doesn't have to check in with me all the time. He just looks. He's like, I should be reading right now. I should be doing a workbook. But the problem that I've kind of come in, well, the problem that we're having right now, and I want people to start thinking about the questions they want to ask you later as well, is that, like I was saying, the time that, like, you know, they'll give them like 3 pages of workbook. Well, Jude will do that like in 5-15 minutes. And then the rest of the hour, he's got nothing to do. So he just wanders up into my office and shows me his work. And he's like, what do I do? What do I do? I'm like, hey, man, I cannot do this right now. Right. I need you to go back downstairs and be self-sufficient, you know, stick on your schedule. If you don't have anything to do, just read. So that's kind of the troubles that I'm assuming not only me, but most people that are just getting into this homeschooling thing are having. So yeah, that's the update on what our challenges are and the problems are at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. And it's going to look different in each family. And if you're able to tell Jude, go read, and he doesn't mind that,
right,
you're so lucky. I mean, my oldest 2 kids don't love to read. And so if I told them that, they'd be like, oh, you know. So yeah, the teachers, I give them so much praise and respect. They have basically been asked to build a house during a storm, you know, and to take their curriculum that they had planned for the rest of the year and to try to transfer it to home learning. They're completely different things. And the classroom atmosphere in a school is completely different than homeschooling. And that's part of why some of us chose to homeschool. But you know what I mean? So and that doesn't mean
Ella's in here, by the way.
Oh, hi, Ella. And so, yeah. And, you know, one of the biggest things is that when people do even decide to switch to homeschooling is that they could possibly be so surprised at how quickly they are done, right?
Oh,
because if you have a classroom of 32 kids, it takes a long time for 32 kids to get their book out and to turn to chapter 4 and to get their paper and their pencil, and all those things add up throughout the day. And that's part of learning with distractions. And, you know, I mean, we have distractions in our house too. We have over 20 animals. And so there's always a constant distraction also in our house. But the main thing really is that people are going to have, I know that everyone's has an opinion about homeschooling. And before this all came about, whether it was from a experience where they, you know, had a neighbor kid that always had high waters on and was playing like weird imaginative games, like, however, everyone had their opinion of homeschoolers, whether it was factual, accurate, whatever. But everyone needs to get rid of that opinion, because for sure then you could turn to everyone and say, well, what would you do if you homeschooled? And everyone would say, well, my kids would still get up when all the other kids get up, and they would sit from 8 to 3, you know, they'd have a lunch break, and they would still hit all the academics. And that's not what homeschooling looks like, and it's not supposed to. And the thing is that no one's homeschooling right now. They're crisis teaching, and
Oh,
those are
that's good.
completely different things. So if you had a standard in your mind that, well, if my kids ever homeschooled, they would get up and they would do everything, you have to let that go right now, because you didn't choose to homeschool. You know,
Sure.
and you didn't have time to prepare. And so you need to make the adjustments for what is best for your family. And it's going to look completely different for every family. I mean, some families are just trying to survive right now. Jobs
Yeah,
lost. We all
absolutely.
know the problems. And so to now put on some families' plates that, oh, you need to log in at this time, and here's the password, and you have multiple kids, and it's asking a lot. And I really encourage you parents, especially of grade school kids, that if it's just really not working, that you take the reins and realize that you are the parent, not the school. And we are all in this together. Like, the schools know, oh, you didn't finish out the school year, you know?
Right.
So I believe that the schools are going to make it up, you know, next year, because like I'm saying, this wasn't a national, this wasn't a disaster that happened in specific towns. Like,
Right.
we're all in it.
Yeah.
So you can't bear that burden. And you also have to change how you define success. Like, if you're used to your kids coming home with a packet full of completed worksheets from the week, and then they've got, you know, a reading assignment for the weekend and everything, that's not how I personally don't define success, with a bunch of worksheets done. And so you just need to completely shift how you are thinking about homeschooling, because you're not right now. You didn't have time to prepare. You didn't get to select the curriculum, and the teachers are doing their best, absolute best. But to take a classroom curriculum and try to implement it into the home, that's a really complicated, messy thing. And but for sure it's working, especially for some junior high and high schoolers, where it's a lot of lecture based classes, and
Right.
that's awesome. And but I just really encourage the parents, especially with the grade school kids, to, you know, feel that they can make the decision for what's best. I don't know the laws in all the states. I just know them for Washington. But you know, if your kid is under 8, you don't have to do anything, and the law completely protects you. But above 8, you have to sign a letter of intent, and
Sure.
but it's just a piece of paper. And thank goodness it's the end of the school year. Can you imagine if this would have happened in October?
Right.
I mean, the kids are going to be fine. And, you know, there's so many things that you can do to, if you want to transition, because I realize it's complicated to be like, well, this is our school year, and then there's summer, and that's a lot of together time that we're not used to.
Sure.
So if the family does want to implement some schooling, and they want to do that on their own, like we can talk about some practical, simple ways of doing that. But my heart goes out to the teachers and the families that feel like they are doing, you know, homeschooling all of a sudden, and they didn't want to. And I was telling to the kids, I was like, I'm kind of nervous to talk to Josh. And they were like, why are you nervous to talk about homeschooling? You seem to want to talk about it whenever anyone wants to talk about it. And I'm definitely not one of those homeschoolers that thinks everyone should homeschool.
Sure.
But it's different to talk to people when they come to me and they say, tell me what it looks like for your family, because I'm really interested in homeschooling. It's very different to obviously be talking to people that, you know, have been forced to crisis teach
Right.
within the home, and they didn't want to, or maybe they wanted to, but now they're under such stressful circumstances that it's extremely complicated. And so I just really encourage everyone to surrender to what it is, our reality right now, know that it is going to end, and make the decisions that are best for within your family. And the kids are going to be fine. They really
Yeah.
are natural learners. And so.
The way our parenting time is split up between my ex and I is that Jude comes back to us kind of midweek. And what's unfortunate about that is that she's already started, you know, some of the curriculum. And then, you know, she's received all these emails and that I've kind of overlooked because he's not with me at the moment.
Right.
And then he gets back to me and I get these text messages like, hey, did you join the Zoom today? Did he look at the aquarium Zoom? You know, like there's all of these things that aren't, I guess there's not one solution or one place where all of this stuff is posted. It's literally like 10 or 12 emails.
Yes.
That we're both trying to, at different houses, keep up with. And then Star's also, you know, she's better at micromanaging all this stuff than I am. And so, you know, I'm getting these, hey, did Jude do this? And I'm like, what do you mean? Did he do that?
Right.
And to your point, you know, I was disappointed in myself the first day that I started missing a lot of stuff. And because it felt like the teachers were kind of getting themselves into gear. And it felt like we were getting some sort of structure or normalcy on what was expected. And then I was too busy trying to do all the things I was doing.
Right.
And it just didn't work out. So to your point, I think grace is like a big thing to have right now.
Oh, absolutely.
And grace for yourself and then grace for the teachers that are just learning this. Do you remember kind of what you're like starting off with Ella? And I'm not sure if she went to school for a minute or if she's always been homeschooled, but what do you remember as the either getting started or the transitioning? What do you remember the pain points being there? And how did you get to a place where you felt more comfortable homeschooling than you did when you started out?
Yeah. So just one point I want to make on your saying about giving yourself grace, parents and teachers, and also to the children, you know, they have had their lives completely turned upside down. Also, they were used to school and their schedule. And, you know, even in the homeschool community, we used to go to a co-op all day on Monday. That's what we chose to do this year. And,
explain what a co-op is real quick, because I don't think everyone knows that.
So they can look a little different depending on the co-op. But this year we went to, and still go, and I love it, a co-op. Hi, Mom. That is all day Monday, and all of the kids' core subjects are covered there, and they're taught by parents within the co-op.
Yep.
And some of them are more overly qualified to teach it, and then some of them bring so much passion to it that they, you know, they're amazing at it also. And so anyways, that's what it looks like. And then we have basically a syllabus for the whole week. We know exactly what we need to do. And so my kids do have a deadline to turn things in then the following Monday. And that's just that's new for us this year. And there's so many different ways to homeschool, of course. Schooling isn't a one size fits all in the classroom or at homeschool. And so that's what we're doing this year. But you know, to the point is that even a homeschool family, we are feeling the change too. And our co-op was closed, of course, because we follow the rules of
right.
And our kids also went to dance and 4-H and all those extracurricular things after school, like everyone else's kids do. And those were also taken away. So there definitely has been a change for us too. But you were saying the transition, and my kids did go to, actually, ironically, they did go to a private school, but you know, and Ella went until she was in 3rd grade. And I honestly always had a tug at my heart to homeschool.
Sure.
But I think I felt like I wasn't equipped. And then we bought a property that, you know, you're aware of. And I remember that when we came to look at the place, there was this classroom or empty office downstairs in the house. And I remember when we were looking at the place to buy it, and I remember walking in this room and being like, oh my gosh, like this is like the perfect classroom. Like,
yeah, Your
I think,
craft room downstairs?
yes,
Yeah, that's
yes.
great.
And you do not need a classroom to homeschool, mind you,
Sure.
at all. I'm actually one of the only people I know that actually has actual classroom. Most people do it at their dining room, and that's perfect. But anyways, that's just how this house is laid out.
Sure.
And so our kids were registered to go to school. We had paid the deposit or whatever, and it was like August, like the last hour, they were starting in like 3 days. And we have some really close friends that they had always homeschooled. And I told Dawn, I was like, I don't want to send the kids back to school. I just don't want to. And let's go meet with our friends, the Pletties, and let's go talk with
Oh
them
yeah,
about
Tyson and
homeschool.
Amy.
Yes. And so we went to dinner with them and her brother-in-law and sister, who have also homeschooled from the get-go. And long story short, just after that dinner, and we prayerfully decided then that we were going to homeschool. And we told the kids that, if we're going to try it for a year, and if you don't want to go back to homeschooling, we will drive you back to your private school. I mean, because we have to commute to the private school,
Sure.
drive you every day. And but anyways, so that's how we started. And the hardest part for me, and I think almost all homeschoolers, the hardest part every year is starting. The transition from summer to getting in the groove, especially with younger kids, where you're like, no, we're not on summer anymore. Yesterday
Oh,
was summer,
sure.
today's school. And so that's another reason why my heart really goes out to those that are trying to get through this crisis teaching, is that you are in the trenches of the hardest part, figuring out
Sure.
when is the best time to even start the day, or what parameters do you set, and guidelines. And again, I just really encourage everyone to drop the standard that they have in their mind of how they would homeschool their kids, because that's not where you're at right now. You
Sure.
weren't allotted this time to research curriculum. Every year I spend time trying to figure out the right curriculum and for each kid's learning style. And often I fail, but at least I had that time to try. And so you just have to change your view on how you thought homeschooling would look within your family, because you weren't given the right opportunity. And so you have to just make the best decisions. And so, yeah, starting is always the hardest. And that was the hardest with Ella. And at the time we had a toddler, and there's a lot of families out there that are trying to navigate all of a sudden schooling with really little ones. And
Right.
that's really complicated. And so that's, like you said, that's where the grace just comes in. And, it would be really wonderful if we could look at this time and know that it's going to end, and know that, a tremendous blessing can come from this time. We've been given this opportunity to have more time with our kids.
Sure.
And though we're under often immense stress right now, that, what do we want them to gain from this time?
Sure.
And, if all the Zoom meetings and everything like that for your grade school kid, especially, are just too much, like, I just
Yeah.
encourage you to maybe.
I dropped a couple of them.
Yeah. And I know that people are like, well, I don't want to be the one that's not there. Like, and
Right.
everyone's going to be like, where was your kid watching YouTube? And it's like,
Right.
who cares? We really have to stay in our own lane right now. It's like we can get encouragement from people, but you have to be careful too, I think, because, there could be a kid in your class who you're friends with the mom on Facebook, and it's like she keeps posting her schedule and how she has it all figured out. And then that can like bring you down. I mean, you can find encouragement,
Yep.
but then also like her family is not set up like yours right now. Like, who knows what's going on? The dad's home from work.
Sure.
The dad lost his job. The mom's trying to work. Like, it's not normal at all. Nothing is normal.
Sure.
So,
Well, you brought up something that I want you to talk a little bit about, which is like different learning styles for different kids. And we know that to be true. I think every parent understands that to some extent. But you know, really what you're getting at is not every kid can be given the same thing and perform the same way, right?
Right.
How, you know, you've got 3 different kids that you're homeschooling. You know, what are kind of some different styles and ways that you're adjusting curriculum or maybe their structure or whatever it is so that they have, you know, more rewarding days or better productive days? I'm not sure how you would put that, but.
Well, you have to be careful how you define, right, productiveness and success.
That's right.
And if I try to not put success on finishing a math lesson, but maybe my kids mastered, you know, a math skill within
Okay.
a lesson.
Right.
So taking away success from worksheets done, and that will free you so much, especially if you have in your mind what the kids always came home from school with.
Right.
And so if you think right now that they're not learning because they're not coming home with all these worksheets and the science reports and everything, I really encourage you to just erase that from your mind right now, because that's not how you need to define success. Question it for the future, but for right now, we're just talking about right now. But yeah, every kid has a different learning style, just like we adults could be more visual or not. You know, my oldest, so I have high school, junior high, and grade school. So this year we're touching on all the grades. And my oldest, she's very visual. And so for her to read like a book, she doesn't necessarily retain it as well. So for her, doing an audio book while following along is really helpful.
Yeah.
And some practical ways that you might be, or just in general, people can try to loosen the reins with their homeschooling is that if you just simply try to focus on, you know, the classic 3 R's, the reading, the writing, and arithmetic right now, especially, and you can channel that in a way that interests your kid. Like if you haven't received a lot of direction from your school, I think you should celebrate that and have freedom to do what you want to do, but don't start going on Pinterest and making yourself crazy and trying to be the homeschool mom of the year, because now's not the time to put that pressure on you. I mean, you can take a classic book, you know, like on Robin Hood, and you can touch, if you take your time and you can, you know, and that can be on a lot of different age groups. You know, you can learn geography and obviously literature, and have a highlighter by you, and you can highlight words there. You can then discuss vocabulary words with the kids. So then, like after you're done reading, say you have a kid that loves to write. Well, tell that kid, why don't you write what you think is going to happen in the next chapter? Whereas I have a couple of artists, so I'd be who enjoy art over writing, and so I would say, how about you draw, and you know, why don't you illustrate something that happened in what I just read?
Sure.
And so we have different age, you know, groups. Like I said, for my 8-year-old, she could draw something, and then I could write out a sentence of what she drew that has to do with the story, and then she can copy it. There's a lot of beauty in copy work. You know, if kids aren't independent writers right now and you're really busy, like for the working parents, they can have kids copy work, you know, a few sentences or paragraph, whatever, out of a story, and they're learning and seeing and mirroring how things are grammatically correct and you know, everything like that. So keeping it really simple like that can really go a long way, and your kids will really retain these special stories that maybe you read during this time of a crisis, which isn't normal. And I do think it's really important to be upfront with the kids, like, this isn't normal, especially the kids that love school, right? There's kids that do love to go to school. Like, you know, honey, you will go back to school. This is not normal. We're all in it together. And this is what we're doing right now. And we're going to learn in a completely different way. And so don't try to make it like it was at school, because that will make you crazy. And
And that's the way I think, sadly. It's just like one of those things where I'm just like, well, if they know how to go to school, then they know exactly what is expected of them at home. And then obviously, depending on my stress level or busyness, I'm like, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you right now.
right.
But one of the things we started doing that I think has helped a lot, and I want to talk to you about this too, kind of like what are you doing in the margins of their lessons. But one of the things we've done is we'll feed them lunch and then we'll go take a walk. And so we'll be gone for 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes around the neighborhood, and then we'll come back and then they'll get back into their studies. And then we go for another walk in the evening before dinner.
Yes.
And so I think that's like, there are things that we're doing to break things up and creating memories with them and, during this time. And I think that's really good. And it's honestly, when I do that, my work goes better because I feel better about the parent that I am, versus just always telling, Jude, like, hey man, you got to figure something else out. I've got this deadline or whatever. So I know you guys live on a farm, so y'all have tons of responsibility. I know the kids are really plugged into that and love taking care of the animals. What are the things that
they love?
My
son would definitely still rather play video games than feed the horses. They're normal kids.
So video games, taking care of the horses, chores. What are the things that you're kind of working into their daily lives or have worked into their daily lives to break up the monotony of, sitting in a classroom?
Right. Well, I think it's really, really important that anyone feels that their kids need to sit from 8 to 3 in order to achieve academic success at all. The goal is to have them love to learn. And we all know our kids better than anyone, right? Yep. And so during this time, if you can cultivate and have your kid learn and be excited about learning, what an amazing gift, like I have a friend that she's academically so knowledgeable, and she was a principal, very bright, and it's going really well for her with the Zoom stuff. But one of her kids happens to love to garden, which is so neat. And I was like, if your kid loves to garden, you could assign them to research what grows in the Pacific Northwest and why and when and blah, blah, blah. And
sure.
Just assessing what the kids' passions are. And again, you're not setting a habit for life and for their learning, because we might get hung up on, well, when they go to school, they need to do what the teacher says, not what they want them to do. But this isn't normal right now. So if it will save your family peace and sanity right now, maybe you do need to let your child, research something that they love. I don't know a lot about unschooling. I've listened to some seminars and stuff like that about it. But I encourage anyone out there to look it up. It is a structured way of learning where it is child-led. It happens to not be what our family has chosen to do, but there's a lot of successful families that do it. And so something like that might be a great thing right now, is to incorporate some unschooling in your home. So yeah, but we break up like I was saying, we changed things a little bit. I did have our kids before set an alarm, and they did get up at a certain time. And to me, that was important to keep that structure for my junior high and high schooler, because I want them to have a sense of responsibility and waking up.
Yep.
But right now, I am letting them sleep in, because I want the extended quiet time into the, late morning for my own sanity, because there is no breaking, there is no separation. And we happen to, well, the kids and I happen to tend to stay up later. So, that's what works for us. And we just changed that a few weeks ago when I was like, okay, you know what? Things aren't normal even for us. What can we do? And So that's a way that we have changed things, and we'll do it the rest of the year since school is canceled the rest of the year. So we're doing our curriculum, but we are getting a later start, and we're not going to any after school things. So there's no rush.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think so someone here, I've got something real quick before I go into some of the questions, but like, I think one of the things that could work in everyone's benefit is the fact that we are going into summer, and most of the people's summer schedules, school is going to end and then summer is going to begin, and then they'll basically have what they've normally had, which is summertime before they
Right.
start again. They'll have some margin there before they have to start something else again. And I think with us, like, I don't know when the last day is going to be, of when we should
Right.
or should not be,
So when's the
still.
summer?
Yeah, right. So June 21st seems a little late to me, but one of the people here in the chat are wondering, they've got a 2 and 4 year old and a 4th and 5th grader, and so you were talking about your kids and how they're kind of staggered and where they're at. How do you get someone like Flora, who is fun and creative, and probably beats follows a different drummer or whatever? I'm really bad at analogies, but then you've got Cash and Ella, who are probably a little bit sick of all that energy and know that if they just stick
Yeah.
with something, they can get it done. How do you help that out?
Yeah, so that obviously is challenging. I mean, my kids are all very different. Our 8-year-old woke up this morning and she was like, I need to take my painting because it's dry and I need to take it down to dad and I need to have him scan it. It's like she wakes up rip roaring, like ready to go. Like, she's like, are my paints, out, or should I? She's just ready to go.
Right.
And always for her, it's art, which, by the way, I'm excited for all this new material that is available through all of the online painting little classes and everything. There's like
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit towards the end. I want to talk about resources and things like that. I think that's really important.
Yeah. So one idea that I have for the age gap like that, and it is, you have to be prepared for the interruptions. It's going to happen. And something that I learned from, there's this wonderful resource called Teaching from Rest, and it is a faith-based book. It's Sarah Mackenzie. She talks about morning meetings, and that's something I did really frequently in the past with the kids, and I really want to get back to it. And what that looks like is even with the age group that I have, there still are things that you can go over, right, that they all still benefit from. And so gathering time in the morning, maybe the morning isn't the best, but generally towards the late afternoon, we're all ready to be done, right, and be away from each other maybe a little bit. And so morning, I think, is ideal. But you have a time where you can talk about things, and right now you might talk about, what's going on. Things can spawn
like a check-in time.
Yes, a check-in time, and being like, do you understand why, like, mommy had to go to the store, to several stores, and I still didn't come back with certain things, supply and demand. Like, you can explain all these things to the kids. And but for the little ones, you can have set aside, like, it's like a busy box. Like, it's like this box of things that you only bring out during morning time, Play-Doh, like all that kind of stuff that they like. And so this comes out only during morning time. And when you're kind of having this discussion as a family, maybe you're praying for the day, or just kind of a meeting kind of time. And it's really important, I think, to check in with the kids. Like, how are you doing? Like I was saying, like, their worlds have been completely flipped upside down also. And they're overhearing the news, and they're seeing the stress. The stress is really deep in some families right now. Yes. And so just kind of a time like that. But if you're able to get one-on-one time with littler ones before this, then they might not be as clingy. But also just, you know, again, like if you have grade school kids, I really encourage you to know that they are natural learners. And, you know, I mean, if they're home, say the mom had to go to work and they're home with their dad, and their dad is, maybe he loves cars, like he could explain the history of Volkswagen through images and like a timeline of history. And, you know,
Sure.
I mean, don't think that it has to be exactly where they left off. And
Well, I think one of the things you're speaking to, and I know this is different for so many people, but I've seen the benefit. You know, I know your kids pretty well. I know your Don's brother's kid pretty well, but it's like you all talk to them like they're adults, right? And like the way I talk to Jude is like an adult. And so when he asks a question, I don't, you know, limit my vocabulary. I keep it open and I try to explain as best I can about these things. And it really shows how far that goes just in normal everyday life, you know. And
yeah,
so what you're talking about is like just teaching them as you're doing what you're doing.
right.
I took the time the other day to show Jude what hand lettering was. And I'm not a hand letterer, but I understand the concept pretty well. And I've got a lot of books to show to him. And so you know, he was drawing this like Bruce Springsteen thing that he's like obsessed with right now.
I love that he loves Bruce.
I know, it's amazing.
The boss.
Yeah, so it's so amazing. And so I just, you know, brought that book out and started showing him the different terminologies and how people did this stuff. And then, you know, he was equating it to all the band logos and things that he had seen. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Actually, that's hand lettering. So, and so that was an education lesson right there, right? And I think that it helps him expand his vocabulary, expand his understanding. So I think that's a really good point. Just keeping your kids present. If you've got to do something, you know, bring your kid along and then help explain that to them.
Yeah. And just really remembering that right now, all of this weirdness is our normal. Like this is what we have to deal with right now. So, I mean, sometimes I have to totally have to reset with the kids and be like, remember, you chose to homeschool. Like, don't look at it as an inconvenience.
Oh, sure.
You know, so in the same way, you know, we need to decide like, okay, I'm trying to work, but then my child's also here. Like I need to, you know, from such a certain amount of time, or I mean, like what you were doing with the walks, like obviously that wasn't what you did before, but that's really awesome. And that breaks up the day and it's really fruitful. So that's a win-win.
Yeah. I think it's so funny. You know, I'm trying to get Jude to read a lot more now that he's able to. It was such a struggle at the beginning, but he started getting this Who Is book.
Yes.
You know, the Who Is series.
With the illustrations on the front.
Yeah. And he's like reading about Steve Jobs and like all of these people, Babe Ruth, Albert Einstein, like all these really amazing people throughout our history. And anyway, with him, I'm going back through and he's telling me, he's not writing down a book report, but he's telling me all of the things that he learned. And it's shocking how much a 9-year-old is retaining from that book.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like if he loves to read, that's wonderful. But you know, some kids, maybe they happen to not love to read. And so right now, a lot of the like Audible and everything like that, they're doing a lot of free.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And even through your libraries, I believe even with them not being open, you can still download a lot of the Audible books. Yep. But, you know, if your child is listening to a book right now and they can't follow along because you don't have it, that's still really awesome. And if they are, you know, like my 8-year-old isn't a fluent writer, if she then wants to dictate back to me what she learned from that, and I could write it down or I could write a few sentences and I have her copy it. You could make it your own.
Sure.
You know, and make it work for your family.
Yeah. Jude grabbed a Calvin and Hobbes book last week. And he did this all by himself, and he's a really awesome kid. Brilliant's not a word I would put in there, but he's an awesome kid. And he grabbed a Calvin and Hobbes book and he traced out different images in the book, and then traced the speech bubbles, but didn't write the words in it. He just developed his own words with different images. And
that's awesome.
That's that's incredible. I mean, he brought it up to me and shared the story with me. And I thought that was incredible. And it's just something he did because it was a free time. He couldn't go outside. It was raining. And so he decided to trace, a Calvin and Hobbes book.
Yeah.
And anyway, there's a lot of things. And in kind of thinking through that, he was doing all kinds of work with like grammar and storytelling, and it's huge. And I guess we just never think about that. I mean, it's so funny how maybe this is Americans, but like how much structure, like this idea of us having structure is like directly equivalent to us being successful, maybe. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think we kind of impart that or push that onto our kids. And obviously responsibility, huge. Yes. That's all huge. Consequences, huge. I mean, these are life lessons, but at the same time, and especially right now, you keep reminding me that this is not, my time to shine as a homeschooler. But I think that it's really important that we all remember that like this is going to go away. That we don't need to step up to the plate as parents and try to be homeschooler of the year. I mean, this has taken you years. Your daughter's 16 now, so it's like she's been doing this for a really long time. You've been doing this for a really long time, and so it's easier. Oh, okay.
I mean, it's still.
Let's shut it down. Shut it down, guys.
Well, no, I just mean like it's just because I've done it a long time doesn't mean it's perfect,
Sure.
And so that's all.
Yeah. So, any more questions? What are you doing for yourself emotionally now? Like, how are you keeping? I'm looking at this last question. What are you doing now to kind of reset in the middle of these days? Are you just trying to be on as much as you can until you're able to get off the clock and retire for the evening, or are there things that you've had to do to kind of?
So just like everyone, I reassessed, and like I was saying earlier, me letting my kids sleep in since they happen to sleep in, which I realized that not everyone's kids do that. For me, I happen to get up in the morning early, and I go get a cup of coffee and I bring it back to bed, and I might read, or I might just stay on my phone, and then I do cardio for about an hour, and then I dusted off this yoga DVD that I've had for I don't even know how long, and I started doing that, and I was encouraging the kids. I was like, this is a weird time, and we have a lot more free time, and so what's something you want to do? And I was like, I'm gonna do this yoga DVD every day. I'm adding that, and that's actually been really satisfying. So yeah, I mean, that is really fruitful for me. And then at night, I'm very thankful. I have a really small home gym, and at night I lift weights with my husband. Actually started this week. I've been working out with him. So that's really revitalizing. And yeah, I mean, I have been in the seasons where my kids are younger, but my kids are older right now. So in the evening, we have been having family time, especially this week leading up to Easter, where we've been in the Word together. But like we started, this is embarrassing, but as a homeschooling family, we've never read Harry Potter, the series. And so we started listening to the audio and together in the evening, and it's been just really fun. But I feel I have let go in the evenings where like all my kids are on devices. Like they're all monitored devices, but like they're all doing their own thing, and that's okay. We all need separation from each other, and and especially since the older kids, they're communicating with friends, and that's great. So
yeah, technology has been a really great way for my 12-year-olds to stay connected with their friends. My stepson he's so sneaky, but he was like, yeah, I'm going outside. And he took like a backpack and like his phone and everything. And we saw him like waiting at a stop sign. And I was like, we were like, what is he about to do? Like, this does not look right. And then sure enough, he disappeared, and I drove down the street, and he was like hanging out at a park with a friend. And we were like, look, man, your mom is pregnant. There's no way you can like, we need to take this a little bit more seriously. And he was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. We were 6 feet apart. And I was like, no, you weren't. So it's interesting kind of, I don't even know why I brought that up. That's a really interesting like thing I've had to kind of manage in the midst of this, but they're on devices too. Oh, that's what I was saying is like, they're keeping up with their friends now through devices, FaceTime. And then we're keeping up with them while they're at their other parents on FaceTime too. And that's really great. But you mentioned something I do want to talk about in this episode that is not relevant to hardly anything, but I think for people personally, I think would be really great, is that you say you work out in the evenings. As I understand it, a couple of years ago, you made a pretty big decision in your life to become a bodybuilder. And I've seen you as you're basically slimming down to that last competitive thing, and you're super serious about it. And so I want to know, just personally, I want to know what got you into it, how it makes you feel, and just kind of like, you're sticking with it, and you're also realistic too. Like we were talking about your food and stuff when I was there, and I mean, you're structured obviously, but it didn't look like it was painful. So yeah, I would just love to know that story before we get off. We got about 9 minutes.
Oh, that should be plenty of time. Yeah, so a couple years ago, actually a friend of mine, it's about 3 years ago, she competed for her first time, but she has a long background in fitness, and she was one of the CrossFit coaches at the gym where I went to, and then she has her own private gym. So she competed for the first time, and I went and saw it, and then I told her, I was like, I want to do that. And really that's where I started. And then she took me under her wing, and a couple other ladies who we've become really close friends. And the first year was all about weight loss, because I lost over 55 pounds. I've always had an interest in health and fitness, even since being a teenager. But, things got the best of me during the childbearing years and stress. And I drank alcohol too frequently, which then led to overeating in the evening and all this. And so I was able to, through this, break away from those unhealthy habits. And I do love, love, love the sport, and I do love to work out. So I do think they kind of need to go hand in hand in order for you to be successful, because you do have to be really strict with food, unless you have an amazing metabolism, which I don't. I have a normal metabolism for a woman my age. And I was supposed to compete. It would have been my 4th competition the week after April. And of course that has been canceled. So I went from being really strict, because I was in that kind of zone leading up to it, to then being quarantined, where I'm okay, make good choices. Like, so, yeah, I love it.
So tell me, so you're saying you went to a competition, you saw what was on stage, and you were just like, I got to do that. Tell me what was going through your head when you were, watching people compete.
Well, honestly, I've had a pulse on it. Like, I've known about it, but I definitely never thought at this point, after having 3 kids, I gained 60 pounds in each of my pregnancy, like that I could actually do that. So I was just really inspired by how many women there were at my age. And obviously I knew it was going to be a ton of work, but I loved taking the idea of, I'm not working out to try to lose weight. I'm working out because I'm working on an actual, fitness goal. And the nutrition for me, and I think most people, is the hardest part, not going to the gym. So obviously that's very difficult. But I also don't mind it, because I love to cook. So I just get creative with what I am allowed to have. And So right now I'm like, trying to be reasonable, but also baking a lot with the kids because that
Sure.
breaks up the day, and it's a way that I can do some math with my 8-year-old without her really realizing it. And so,
Nice.
yeah, but I need to stop eating a dozen cookies and work on eating just one. So.
Yeah, we have a tough time in the evenings when we're watching a movie. That's kind of our in trouble time is we'll
Yeah.
come down here and we'll sit on the couch and we'll watch a movie and we'll realize like that it's like by the time the movie's over, it's still like 9 o'clock. And so, and my wife's like, yeah, it's time to go to bed. And then I just find times right now, which is not good, but I'm just like, well, do you want popcorn? Like maybe popcorn
Right.
will keep her awake a little bit longer. And then it's just all downhill from there. It's like we're taking
Oh,
Easter candy and like melting that on
oh,
the popcorn. It's not
oh,
good stuff, but it
yeah.
is good stuff.
It is. It is. But I've had friends that will ask me, like, tell me exactly what you eat because I'm going to start eating, exactly that. And I'm like,
No, you're not.
you really have to want to do, like, I really
Yeah,
want to get on stage and do really well. So I'm driven by that because otherwise, what is keeping you from, having a beer right now?
right.
So yeah, that's where.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I've always been curious as to kind of how you got into it, and then also, I mean, you're amazing at it. I mean, your transformation is pretty incredible, and I'm just grateful that I think people our age that have goals, fitness goals, to me at least, are incredibly inspiring because it's like the stress of not only being an entrepreneur or a parent or whatever. I mean, there's so many things kind of in our lives as adults. The older we get, we stress out about, but having the discipline to do something like that's pretty fantastic. So I thank you for sharing that. I know that
Thank you.
I know that's not a thing that we do at Creative Works, but I think
I mean,
it's a good thing to share. And I'm
it's
gonna
pretty creative.
yeah, I'm gonna start doing more things. I mean, everyone's been talking about COVID-19 and how it's changed us all, but I think it's really important to just kind of continue to share stories about what people do and who they are. And
Yeah.
there's obviously going to be someone that either is watching this now or will watch this later that will see this and be inspired by what you're doing. And so anyway, thank you so much for coming on. I thought it went well. Thank you for sharing this stuff. I think
I was hoping for well.
Oh, well, compared to Trainwreck or me not having any questions, so I feel like I did this personally for me. A friend of mine suggested that we get someone who knows something about homeschooling on. And I was like, oh my gosh, that'd be a great idea. I know nothing about homeschooling and know nothing about what I'm doing right now. I'm obviously feel like I'm failing with my kids at the moment. So I really do appreciate your input. I think it's going to be helpful for those that tuned in and watched this. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye. All right. So that was Erika Clark. Thanks for tuning in today. If you are trying to share this and want to watch it later, you can watch it on our stories, on our profile for, I think it's up to 12 or 24 hours, depending on when I share the next story. Sadly, I think for whatever reason, when I share a story, it kicks it off. So